How do you know when I'm back in the UK? It's when I have to film in the rain. Hello one and all, welcome to Seen Through Glass, and yes, welcome back to soggy England. But welcome to the latest generation Honda Civic Type R. In my mind, this thing represents a bit of a dying breed. The proper hot hatch. Even though it's more of a hot saloon these days, but let's look past that because it's one of the last manual, front-wheel drive, driver-focused hatchbacks that you can go and buy today. All its historic competitors, well, they no longer exist. The Megane RS, dead. The Ford Focus, and therefore the Focus RS, soon to be dead. The i30N, no longer available in Europe. The Golf GTI, no longer available with a manual gearbox. The Golf R, all-wheel drive and just a bit too silly. I mean, the list goes on. The only real competitor left for this thing is the GR Yaris, another Japanese car. So thank God for the Japanese, because us Brits, we need our hot hatches. I have long said there is no car quicker on a British B road than a hot hatchback. Now, I drove the last generation Type R way back in 2018, so I don't remember the entire experience, but I do remember really enjoying it. I think at the time, though, I said if it was my money, I probably would have lent towards the Megane RS, the Trophy R variant, because that thing blew my mind. But like I just mentioned, you can't get that car anymore. And last year, I did the Podium Tours rally to the Nürburgring. Someone bought one of these cars along with them, and I kept noticing it in my rearview mirror, thinking, oh, it looks beefy, and the owner looks like he's having a ton of fun, so I've been desperate to have a go ever since, and I'm expecting it to just be a better version of the last generation. So whilst I can't do a comparison and tell you exactly how much better it is, well, given the fact that it's one of the last few cars that does this, and I do remember really enjoying the last one, it's going to be an overly positive review, I think. And on that note, we can actually kickstart with the way this thing looks. I think Honda have done a mega job at allowing the Civic to kind of grow up a bit. The previous two generations, Civic Type Rs, well, they were definitely in your face. I think here in the UK we may have even called them chavvy or boy racer-esque. It's a bit extreme. Whilst this thing, I wouldn't necessarily call it like elegant, but it's just beefed up. They've squared off this front end, which I think gives it loads of presence. That wide attractors means that when this thing comes up behind you and you see it in your rearview mirror, you're like, well, I should get out of the way. I did mention in the intro, it's a bit more of a hot saloon than a hot hatch. Now, it's not exactly a small car, but I do think the proportions work. I guess we can all debate this rear wing. When I first saw it, I was like, oh no, that looks like a bit of a disaster. But the more time I spend with the car, the more it kind of makes sense. And you come around the back and we have the now iconic triple exit exhaust. And then just look at the stance of this thing. It just looks mean. It's what you want from this kind of car. Now, before I continue with all the plaudits and warning, there will be many because this thing is fantastic. Let's address one potential negative, which is the price. Here in the UK, if you want to buy one of these cars new, you're going to have to pay £50,000, which I realise seems a lot for a Honda Civic, but bear with me because I'm about to argue, I think it's quite good value. Because for that 50 grand, you get like the whole car. There are very few optional extras for this latest generation Type R. You can pick a couple of slightly uninspiring paints. Some of them cost £650. I think there's like a luggage or like a storage pack, but like that's it. Meaning you get adaptive cruise control included, wireless phone charging included, Apple CarPlay included, the stunning interior included, a really good sound system included. I mean, the list goes on. It's all just, it's here. I have to say, I think the design language of this interior is awesome. I mean, we've got physical dials. And you know what? They look stunning, okay, to touch. They're a tiny bit plasticky, but like, look at these nodules here to control the air vents. That's awesome. As is this kind of hexagonal chicken grate, the metal of the gear knob. It's just lovely and cold to touch. It's a really nice place to be. Now, through Honda Finance, you can pay about £530 a month for one of these cars. And I think it really makes sense when you think of it like that. Yes, 50 grand is hard to stomach for a Civic, but given that all new cars are expensive these days, 500 quid a month for this, I don't think you'd be disappointed. I think if you ordered one of these cars and you got in it, you'd be like, oh yeah, like some of the stuff is a bit Civic, a bit Honda part spin, some cheaper materials, but trust me, they've done enough to make you go like, oh yeah, I'm happy I've spent that money. Why am I doing that voice? Is that a Type R owner? I don't think it is. other sort of possible negative I can think of is the fact it doesn't feel that small on the road, this car. That was always the beauty of a hot hatch. It was small and nimble and easy to thread down a British B road. But yeah, it's not big, but it's not small. Is that it? I think it is. Let's get on with the positive because, yeah, there is so much positive. This thing is near on perfect. For a hot hatch, there is so little I can fault with this car. Now, we've got various driving modes. Right now, I'm in comfort. I'm in the standard startup mode. I haven't turned anything up, and already I'm having so much fun. This is one of my go-to roads here, not too far from my house, so I know it pretty well. And even the fact it's super damp, super greasy, I've still got some mud on my tyres from the car park, I'm already cracking on. It gives you so much confidence, this thing. They spent a lot of time sort of firming up the chassis, and you can really feel that without making the ride itself too firm. Now, it may be, once we start stepping up into these sportier driving modes, the ride will start to get a bit bumpy. I would expect that. The previous generation, I remember, did ride kind of firm, but yeah, it just wants to fly. And what I adore, because it's front wheel drive and there's enough power and torque to be silly, you get the front wheel drive wheel spin. It's so good. Everything else has gone all wheel drive. You kind of miss that every now and again. Yes, there's a little bit of torque still that you have to think about, but it's nowhere near, for example, my Abarth 695 Biposto. That thing, if you accelerated in the corner, you just went straight. This is so easy to position and maneuver. And then on top of that, I have to talk about this manual gearbox. Now, I have really not been able to find a car that has the feel of the manual gearbox in my Porsche 911 GT3. You know, the 7-speed 911 manual gearbox is pretty good, but that 6-speed GT3 box is a delight. This is as close as I've got. The feel, the throw, it's notchy and it's got enough, you know what's going on, it's mechanical enough without being like hard work. And just that metal gear knob and I'm a hooligan. The car might have grown up visually on the outside. I have not grown up behind the wheel. Now, let's start dialing things up. So, driving mode selector here. If I push up once, that takes me into sport. But there's an R+ mode, which theoretically is your track mode. We're effectively on a track, because this is a hot hatch. We're on a tight, bumpy British B road. So, R+, please. Now we're getting it all. We're getting the lairiness. Ooh, and it's come to life audibly as well. Bit synthetic, but who cares? Right, up the hill. Oh, it is not squirming, but the front end is. We got the Michelin PS4S's on here, which are pretty great tyres for these kind of conditions. But yeah, I mean, I've really not got anything bad to say about this car. The confidence it gives you to go so quickly on these little British B roads is fantastic. And the best thing is, because we have not got 850 horsepower and a PDK gearbox, you're not doing stupid speeds. It's all manageable. I mean, don't get me wrong, it is fast. You do have to keep an eye on the speedo. But oh, there's a red light. We should all be buying these cars. In the UK, we should all be buying these cars. Honda is just so good! Why aren't people buying these cars anymore? And that is the question, because if people were buying hot hatches, manufacturers would keep making them. I mean, Volkswagen said they're only not offering a manual gearbox in the Golf GTI moving forward because like 95% of people were ordering GSG anyway. I get it, but it's such a shame. You know, when I was growing up, hot hatches was all about. It was accessible and semi-affordable performance. This thing has only 320 odd horsepower. It's like 100 horsepower down on what people now consider a hot hatch, things like RS3s and A45s. But it's just the right amount and it's so engaging. I think people just don't want to be engaged. They want cars that are easy to use, easy to drive, performance that's easy to access. But trust me, when you get into something like this and you really get on it, you feel like a god, like a driving god. And driving a Honda and feeling like a driving god, I immediately start to feel like Ayrton Senna. And you know what? All manufacturers are having to do this now. They're having to pull on their heritage, pull on the heartstrings to sell cars. And I think Honda needs to do it more with Senna. You know, we're sadly marking 30 years since his death at Imola. So much of his success in Formula One was using Honda engines. And let's not forget, he was involved in the development of the first ever Honda supercar, the NSX, and that gave us the first ever Type R. This thing wouldn't exist without the NSX, the Type R NSX, and therefore somehow Senna. So I thought what I would do to sort of celebrate things and maybe pull on your heartstrings more, motivate you to go out and seek out things like this. I go to McLaren Technology Centre and check out some of Senna's, I guess, most iconic race cars to celebrate him, celebrate the link with Honda, F1, I mean just all of it. Because this is a celebration of driving and kind of good old-fashioned driving in a hot hatch. So yes, I'm taking the Honda to McLaren. Over the years, I must have come down here to the MTC like 10 or so times. It's quite ridiculous. It never gets any less special. It's like an outrageous place to visit, potentially one of the coolest factories or headquarters in the automotive / racing world. You can't help but drink the Kool-Aid when you come here. I mean, driving down the driveway is special enough, but then you step inside the doors onto this boulevard and there's race cars and road cars just everywhere, and oh. Anyway, I found myself over in Senna Corner, or what is Senna Corner today. Every time I come, the cars move, they change, different things are on display. Obviously, McLaren have quite a rich racing history, quite a few successful drivers, successful cars, so they never quite know which ones to put at the front, but given the whole Senna vibe at the moment, we find ourselves standing next to one of the iconic cars. I've been thinking about how to phrase this, because it feels like every single McLaren that Senna drove is somehow iconic. But this car you might know of because of the Senna documentary, or just footage that has been played out in endless kind of montages that you would have seen in Sky Sports F1 coverage or F1 coverage itself. It took part in the 1990 Suzuka Grand Prix. And that is when Senna, let's say, accidentally punted Alain Prost off the track. You may remember the year before when they were both driving for McLaren. They came together the final chicane at Suzuka, and whilst Senna went on and won the race and believed he'd won the championship, sort of things took place behind closed doors which made that not happen. So when they came round to Suzuka the year later, and they both lined up next to each other on the grid, Senna was like, I'm not having this happen again. So yeah, when they approached the first corner and Alain Prost was just in front in the Ferrari, Senna thought, nah, and they came together. This is the actual car that was involved in that collision. You can actually see the repair work that was done to the front end of this car, so it's quite mad. Right next to it you can see stunning sort of sculpture of Senna in a kind of iconic driving pose. It's all just a bit overexciting. But behind me is the really special part that we're here to see today, which is the heritage race base. Of course, given McLaren's rich heritage, they have various cars that they still, well, restore, maintain and keep running for events, for showcases, just like the historic Grand Prix in Monaco, which I attended a few weeks ago. So we're going to dive in there because there are two more very special Senna McLaren Grand Prix cars. I'm really trying my best to kind of play it cool and not act like an overexcited child right now, but look, I am in the heritage race bays, standing next to two more Senna cars. This is a very silly moment, and look, they're undressed. The bodywork is off so we can admire engines and suspensions and lots of things going on. So, kicking things off, this is the first McLaren that Senna drove back in 1988, and it took him to his first World Championship. This is one of the most dominant Formula One cars of all time. I actually think maybe Red Bull just stole that accolade, but on a percentage terms, this might still have got it. It won something like 15 out of 16 Grand Prix in 1988. Absolutely ridiculous, and especially ridiculous if you look at it, it actually looks sort of rudimental, especially in comparison to modern cars, or at least the front. When you work your way back and you see, there you go, yes, that Honda engine, you start to realise just how complex these things were. And what's quite mad is, obviously, these engines were never designed to run past the year that they competed in. You know, Honda never planned for this thing to really ever turn on post 1988. But here we are, 2024, and these heritage race guys are preparing this car for a showcase. Actually, Monaco Historic Grand Prix, which I was at, one of these cars ran there. Maybe we've got Goodwood Festival Speed coming up. Maybe that's what it's getting ready for. Who knows? But a lot of work, a lot of technology goes into keeping these things alive, and they really need to be kept alive because, yes, one absolutely sensational bit of kit. And you do sort of realise that, you know, in this era, engine was a big part of it. Over here, though, another car, very much undressed. This was the last car that Senna won a Grand Prix in. This is the 1993 car. 1993 had a lot of sort of emotional wins, not only his final Grand Prix win at Adelaide, and this is the actual chassis that won the Adelaide Grand Prix, but also he won that famous wet race at Donington. Lots of you will have seen footage of that, I'm sure, on YouTube. He won the race in Brazil, famously losing one or two of the gears, actually, getting a little cramp in his shoulders, meaning that he couldn't really lift up the trophy on the podium. He also won in Monaco for the 6th time, really making him Mr. Monaco, which is why McLaren sort of celebrated him so much at the Monaco Grand Prix with this special livery, which was inspired by, yes, the helmet. I mean, it's actually quite eerie getting so close to, there you have it, a real deal Senna helmet. Firstly, can I say, it's quite small. I'm like, it's smaller, I'm sure, than I've seen a lot of other helmets. Maybe he had a small head, I don't know, but this is, yeah, for someone who's such an F1 fan, even though Senna was kind of prior to my time, prior to my era. I was only born in 1989, so he was already winning championships at that point. Being an F1 obsessive, you can't help but then get absolutely infatuated by Senna's story, and that thing is wild. You can just see inside the visor the blue inside the helmet, which was another sort of standout feature of his helmet designs, but so cool, and those colours, as I say, inspiring that new livery. But it's also these Marlboro liveries which were so iconic as part of his kind of career, and then, yes, why we sort of initially came down here in the first place, that Honda link and those Honda engines. This is wild. I literally don't have enough space, enough storage on my phone for the amount of photos I'm about to take in this room. This is a truly standout moment. I really believe it was so much of the success in F1 with Senna that would have motivated Honda to not only improve the sportiness of their road cars, but to introduce the Type R brand. Senna famously said that the NSX needed to handle better, be stiffer after a drive at Suzuka, and the other feedback he passed on is essentially the recipe for Type R cars today. Make them a little lighter, handle a little better, and be amazing fun to drive. So I wasn't joking earlier when I said we have Senna to thank for this latest generation Civic Type R. What an amazing experience. Huge thanks to McLaren for arranging that, helping me tell that story. Here we are back in the Civic Type R. You know, I know I'm a bit hypocritical to be like, why aren't people buying these cars? I haven't bought one, but I did buy them. I kind of moved on in my car life, but you know, I had a Volkswagen Golf was my first car, definitely not a hot version, just a standard 1.4, but I had the first gen Audi S3, I had a couple of Abarths, the 695 Proposto, the 595 Competizione, I had that Citroen C4 Valley car. I do love a hot hatch. I think if I wasn't spoiled and lucky enough to be in things like the GT3 and the Sharon Stradale, I'd still be considering a hot hatch in my life, and this, yeah, has just gone right near the top of my list. So big thumbs up, thanks to Honda for the loan. This car arguably fantastic, and thanks to McLaren. And what a day! It may be raining, but what a fantastic day. I hope you enjoyed the video. Give it a thumbs up if you have. Stay subscribed for plenty more videos to come.